I think that one of the mistakes that individual trustees make, and that is speaking with people and giving the impression that somehow they speak for the board, okay? And it is really the chair of the board, okay, who's really the primary spokesperson, unless someone else is so designated. So one of the mistakes that trustees often make is to enter into conversation or dialogue or even negotiations as though they are representing the entire board. I think it's of utmost importance for a trustee to say, if you're speaking, to say, these represent my views, not necessarily those of the entire board, and to indicate that we have a policy, a procedure, and a protocol for dealing with issues of whatever nature, if it's a purchasing issue, if it's a procurement of a service of some kind, or that kind of thing. And so I think it's very important for trustees to make that distinction if they're going to engage in those conversations. But the most effective way to handle it, I believe, is to refer it back to the university administration, more specifically the president or the chancellor of the university, or the individual that the president may have designated as the one to receive information, input, engage in those conversations with external entities. But attempting to speak and giving the impression that somehow you represent the board can be problematic and can be harmful. It's unintentional often, but for the person on the other side of the table entering into the conversation, they assume that, well, I spoke with a member of the board, and this is what she or he had to say. But in terms of the board itself, the full board, common mistakes, and that is attempting to direct the actions of the administration without fully understanding and appreciating the rationale that got the administration to that point of making a particular recommendation for their consideration. Okay? And I think there's a lot of background work that's required, and the administration has a responsibility to make sure they provide that information. One of the things that I found as a three-time chancellor was the fact that administrators will sometimes view trustees in an adversarial kind of relationship. And I've learned in my 40 years of experience that you need strong leaders and strong boards in order for an institution to achieve the level of excellence and effectiveness that it wishes to achieve. That excellence is really all about a collaborative effort. It's not a solo act. So no matter how experienced the president may be, or the chancellor or the board chair may be, at the end of the day, the institution cannot move forward in a consistent, sustainable way unless there is that collaborative kind of effort and spirit and relationship that exists between the president, the board chair, not only that, but the entire board and the president. I think one of the most effective ways to achieve that kind of collaborative working relationship of which I speak is to get to know each other. What are your goals? What are your aspirations as president or chancellor or as board? What do you see as really important priorities for the university, individually as board members, but collectively as a board? So taking time to get to know each other, okay? And secondly, I think to be responsive in a timely manner to requests that come from board members, okay? Or that comes from the entire board, is to be responsive in a timely kind of manner. But perhaps most importantly, is to make sure that you respond to the entire board as opposed to just an individual board member. I think it's really dangerous when individual board members request information and they are the only recipients of the information. I think it's clear that all members of the board should have access to the same information, so when there's a discussion, everyone is looking at the same thing and speaking from the same perspective, as opposed to one board member going and saying, give me X information, that kind of thing.